I'm Jenni Carlson.
I'm Barry Trammell. Welcome to the Jenni and Berry Show.
Well, here we thought the biggest news we'd be talking about today was the Sooners' bowl destination. Oh, good grief. No, we got lots bigger stuff to talk about. Dillon Gabriel has entered the transfer portal. What does that mean for OU, and how should Gabriel be thought of after 2 years as a Sooner? We'll talk about all that, as well as that bowl assignment, the Arizona Wildcats, on December 28th in the Alamo Bowl. But first, we want to thank our sponsors for supporting the Jenni and Berry Show. The Oklahoma Ford Dealers Association, MidFirst Bank, Next Gen Roofing, Two Fellas Movers, the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, 988, Oklahoma's Mental Health Lifeline. Drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford dealers today for the best deals on Ford's full lineup of trucks and SUVs. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. And hey, let's face it, a box of pizza and a case of beer just don't work like they used to. Nobody wants to help you move. We know two fellas that love moving. At Two Fellas Moving Company, we offer free, no-strings quotes for your move. With more than 20 years experience, we've pretty much moved it all. Our services don't end up moving either. Need to do some remodeling or spring cleaning? We have you covered with dumpster rentals and junk haul services. Remember, quotes are free and there are no strings attached. If you're moving in Oklahoma, make sure to call the fellas. Visit twofellas.com for your free quote today. All right, Barry, big news. Monday, we knew the transfer portal was opening. We suspected some locals would go in. I don't know that I thought Dillon Gabriel would be one of them, but this is not a drill. Dillon Gabriel out of Oklahoma after 2 years, into the portal. Are you surprised?
Not really. We knew that Gabriel likely wasn't returning for whatever reason. It just wasn't meshing in terms of the progression of careers. Jackson Arnold coming in, Dillon Gabriel going out. It seemed like that this was always a 2-year situation for Gabriel, even though he turned into one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And it makes no sense to think, hey, let's change quarterbacks. I don't know to what degree the Sooners wanted Gabriel to stay. When you bring in a Jackson Arnold with all the hype, and clearly the Sooners believe, the OU coaching staff believes that he's a star in the making. It's just a strange situation. And with the portal, guys have options and they can move on. We thought Gabriel might go pro. OU, I think, was hoping he would go pro, but now he can go quarterback somewhere else, maybe even in the SEC.
Yeah, it's an interesting turn. I thought it was more likely that he would test the pro waters, even though that didn't necessarily seem like a great idea. Just his size is not sort of prototypical NFL, but we've seen a lot of guys that with a lot less success as college quarterbacks not only play in the NFL this year, but start games in the NFL. So the fact that, he might go that way, while I didn't think it was probably the best idea, I thought it was a possibility. Instead, another college will be his destination, his place of employ, if you will, next year. I don't know where it's going to be. I think it's interesting, if you think back to the beginning of this season, Brent Venables at one point said something about quarterbacks that was really cut and dried. There was not a question in what he said that he was indicating this was the final season for Dillon Gabriel. And, even though he has that extra year, it was not sort of well, maybe, whatever he said at the time. And I think I might have even nudged you as we were sitting there in the press conference. And it was like, okay, I guess this is the last year for Dillon Gabriel in a Sooner uniform. Now, he got a lot better this year. I don't know if at that point Brent Venables or anybody in Norman knew just how Dillon Gabriel was going to elevate. But Barry, wherever he goes, he's already one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He could win a Heisman Trophy next year. He could, talk about NIL money. I have to assume if he'd have decided to stay, the NIL money would have been fantastic at OU, but he's going to be set in a variety of ways and might just win the Heisman next year.
Yeah, even more, heck, I hope he does win it. Power to him. I hope he does win the Heisman. That's the least of OU's problems. What if he ends up on a roster of a team the Sooners are going to play in 2024? Hey, you thought Baton Rouge was going to be tough? Try Baton Rouge with Dillon Gabriel quarterbacking LSU. So, listen, this all is just strange and kooky, and we don't understand it. And what do you mean you might be okay with your star quarterback leaving and going somewhere else. This whole thing seems fairly orchestrated. As you said, Brent seemed to know this is it for Dillon Gabriel. Instead of trying like the Dickens to keep him. Part of this, of course, is the Jeff Lebby situation. They are really thick. Jeff Lebby was with Dillon Gabriel at Central Florida, brought him to Norman. It's a great match. He became a star, wonderful player. Offense was really good. So when Lebby took the Mississippi State job, seemed fairly natural. For all I know, Dillon Gabriel's going to Mississippi State, and the Bulldogs are not on the schedule in 2024, so the Sooners don't have to deal with that. But as soon as in the transformation of the end of the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State's season finale, and the hiring of Jeff Lebby, Will Rogers, their veteran quarterback at Mississippi State, entered the portal. For all I know, this is all orchestrated. He's going to go to Starkville. But this is something we just got to get our arms around of. This is the modern college football reality. Things like this happen. It makes no sense. Baker Mayfield played a year at Tech, came to OU, played 2 years, decided to come back for a third year, and he didn't transfer to Notre Dame or someplace. Yeah. He's a Sooner for 3 years. It's just going to be less and less than that here in college football.
Yeah, and I think that begs the question of, now, where does Dillon Gabriel's, how are we supposed to look at his legacy? 2 seasons at OU. I think where he lands could impact how people think about him, how they think about that legacy. But regardless of where he lands, Barry, he came in at a time that Oklahoma was in as low a spot as it had been in a very long time. Departure Lincoln Riley, the expected departure, or I guess at the point that Gabriel came in, Caleb Williams had decided to go. Oklahoma needed a quarterback. We saw how thin they were once Gabriel got hurt last year. So clearly they needed help, and they must have known that behind the scenes. I think outwardly we suspected it. But Gabriel comes in, and for 2 years, he leads this team with maturity, with class. Obviously that's a tough position to be in. You're following Caleb Williams, but you're also following the legacy of Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield. He wasn't those guys, but he continued to play hard. He got better. I think Sooner fans everywhere have got to be extremely grateful for Dillon Gabriel and look at him in the highest regard because of the situation he came into and the way he played for the last 2 years.
Well, here's Dillon Gabriel's legacy at OU. 117. 1 minute, 17 seconds left in the Texas game. Sooners are 75 yards from pay dirt. They're in danger of losing to Texas after dominating the game after a 49-0 loss the year before. And Dillon Gabriel takes the Sooners on a drive for the ages. And remember, this is not a program that's had a ton of last-minute winning drives. Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, all those guys, they win so many games easily that, this is not the NFL where every Sunday somebody wins on a last-minute drive. So that was the stuff of legend, what we saw in the Cotton Bowl. And for Gabriel to produce like that, he should be a hero for the ages in Norman. I think he will be. I think people tend to be naturally excited about a recruit like Jackson Arnold. So I think his legacy is secure. It's just very strange why anybody should be happy about losing the All-Big 12 quarterback, a Heisman contender. But like I said, that's just the way it goes. The quarterback transfer portal is out of total control in college football today. So Dillon Gabriel's just part of it, and he's off to parts unknown. We'll find out soon enough, but I wish him well.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Arnold in just a second and obviously the future. But quickly, do you have a sense of, Mississippi State seems an obvious possible landing spot. I've seen Oregon thrown out as a possibility. Obviously, Bo Nix coming to the end of his he can't play after this year. He comes to the end of his eligibility. Is there a spot that you could see Dillon Gabriel landing?
Well, I don't know of any natural fits other than Mississippi State, but he fits in great everywhere. I mean, he'd be great at Oregon. He'd be great at Washington. There's all kinds of people that could take a guy like that, a guy with that kind of accuracy, that kind of mobility, that kind of experience, that kind of leadership. He doesn't have a rifle arm, which is one reason why he's not headed to the NFL, I think. But he's really good. All kinds of people could use him. If Jalen Milroe hadn't sort of blossomed here down the stretch for Alabama, he'd be a phenom at Alabama. He's a wonderful quarterback. Can go all kinds of places, do all kinds of things. He'd look good in the Florida State red and gold. Lots of places would love a Dillon Gabriel. So he's going to have a lot of options. The NIL money will be massive for him.
Yeah.
So the Sooners can only hope and pray that he doesn't actually cross their path in 2024.
Yeah, another interesting one that popped up for me, Kyle McCord, the Ohio State quarterback, entered the portal today. So I don't know if Ohio State's a place that Dillon Gabriel might be looking. I do know that there's going to be a lot of suitors for Dillon Gabriel because of all the things you just mentioned, Barry. The ability to, run, the ability to throw, the leadership, the toughness, all of that you just can't, I don't think you can undersell what a hot commodity is. Obviously, 2 years ago when he shows up in Norman, he's one of the higher ranked quarterbacks in the portal, but that was the same year that, Caleb Williams enters the portal. So not as highly regarded. I think this year he's as highly regarded as any quarterback in the portal. So he's going to have his choice of places to go when it comes to final destinations. Let's talk about Jackson Arnold, Barry, because now this Alamo Bowl, which frankly, I don't know that I think the matchup is all that exciting, but the Alamo Bowl becomes much more interesting now because I assume Jackson Arnold will be the quarterback. I assume Seth Latrell will be calling the plays, but I don't know. It seems like that there's a lot more intrigue all of a sudden in what happens down in San Antonio.
Our boss, Mike Sherman, said something interesting last week, and other people have sort of said the same kind of thing, but he crystallized it. The bowl season for most teams has become the start of next season.
Right.
I mean, when they play Arizona, that's really not about the 2023 Sooners. It's going to be about the 2024 Sooners, the new coordinator, the new quarterback. When the Sooners played in San Antonio 2 years ago against Oregon, that really was not sort of a carryover game from the 21 season. Coach was gone. Bob Stoops was the head coach. Caleb Williams was headed out the door. It was just sort of an exhibition type situation almost.
Right.
But this game is going to be a launch point to next season. It's a series of change. So I think Oklahoma people inside are over the moon about Jackson Arnold. I mean, I've heard from some people that know Jeff Levy that said Levy was just crazy optimistic about Jackson Arnold's future. Just the total package, basically. Now, that doesn't mean he's a great quarterback because you still got to do it. You got to make split-second decisions in the frying pan, and that's really, lots of people have great arms. Lots of people have size. Lots of people have mobility. But can you make critical decisions in a split second when the heat is on? And that's really what's going to determine Jackson Arnold's future as a big-time quarterback. But all the signs are positive. The optimism is run amok. Heck, here's how we know what they think of Jackson Arnold. They seem okay with Dillon Gabriel hitting the road.
Yeah, and that's like you said earlier, it's that anybody's okay with that seems a little bit weird to me. I get Jackson Arnold is really good. I mean, I understand that. I understand the pedigree. I understand the hype. I get it, but still, having Dillon Gabriel walk out the door and everybody still has a smile on their face is a little bit of a head scratcher to me. But it's going to be wildly fascinating to see. Barry, you mentioned sort of the split-second decisions. We got to see Jackson Arnold thrown into a bit of a frying pan at BYU earlier this year when Gabriel has a concussion in the first half, late in the first half of that game. Arnold comes in, was seemingly held sort of to the most basic of plays. They didn't really run a ton with him out there. So that's a little concerning. And yet, when they needed to convert on third down, he checks out of a play. He makes that split-second decision, one that you were talking about, and makes it exactly right, keeps the chains moving. Ultimately, OU wins that game, a road game, a game that they, found themselves in a lot of distress, really, in the second half there. So some really positive signs for Jackson Arnold. But now he's going to get this whole month of practice. We're going to get to see what it looks like when he's getting first team reps, when he's out there with, well, I guess we don't know exactly who he's going to be out there with because we don't know who else jumping in the portal or declaring for the NFL or whatever those questions are. But it's going to be interesting to see what this offense looks like with Jackson Arnold getting that kind of time, as well as Seth Latrell calling the plays. So lots of questions that are going to be maybe not answered down in San Antonio, but we're definitely going to start getting to see some signs of what all those things look like.
Yeah, you know what? It really is a good blueprint for having a strong 2024 season is getting the jump on it. You mentioned the extra practices as the number one quarterback. Bowl prep is often used to fortify the future. Young guys get a lot of work, but in this case, you got your backup quarterback going to be running things, so he gets a jump on that. I think it's also a good time for him to cement himself as the leader, to sort of come in and show guys, hey, I can take over this team the same way that Dillon Gabriel did. So it's fabulous theater, right? I mean, Oklahoma, Arizona in the Alamo Bowl is not going to be near as much fun without this Jackson Arnold plot. So lots to like about this opportunity, and that's what the bowls have become, the minor bowls. That's basically it's a bridge. It's a bridge to 2024, and it's the Jackson Arnold bridge. So I think it'll be fun. We don't know what Arizona is really bringing to the table. Are they going through the same kind of transformation? Last year, Sooners played a Florida State team that was not checked out. No opt-outs for the Seminoles. They sort of came up with a nice culture, had won a bunch of games in a row. Clearly, Mike Norvell had them in a good direction. They came all in on the whatever that bowl was last year. It's Pop-Tarts this year. I don't know what. Cheez-It Bowl.
Cheez-It?
How can you forget Cheez-It? But I did. Anyway, but Sooners played Florida State very tough, lost on a late field goal. Great propulsion for Florida State season. Yep. Great actually preview for the Sooners as well, who made big strides. So will Arizona come in all in? We don't know. Yeah. But it's going to be fun watching Jackson Arnold take over this team, and his relationship with Seth Latrell clearly will be pivotal to this whole situation, and they get to go into this thing together.
Yeah, and we thought that obviously the bowl game would have the undertones of, new offensive coordinator, Seth Latrell, and Joe John Finley taking over, but Latrell will be the offensive coordinator, be the play caller. Let's talk about that. A week ago when we talked, we knew that Jeff Lebby was out, but they had not yet hired Seth Latrell. I like the hire for a lot of reasons. I wish anytime there's a coordinator opening, I wish that minority candidates get the job because there's so few in college football. So in my heart of hearts, I would have liked to have seen a minority candidate be part of the offensive coordinating at OU. But I think as far as Seth Latrell goes, he's off of the Mike Leach branch. He's off of that air raid branch, and really has built his coaching career around that. He spent 2 years at OU, the first 2 years of the Bob Stoops era. Mike Stoops was obviously there as well, but learning from Mike Leach, then was at Tech for several years with Mike Leach there. So knows it well. That's really what he's going to lean into. What do you think of the hire, Barry? I mean, I tend to think it's good. I like the continuity, keeping it in-house. But what do you think about Seth Latrell as offensive coordinator?
Well, I like it from a couple of standpoints. One is it's the OU way. with both Bob Stoops and Barry Switzer. Promoting from within was sort of the standard. Didn't always do it, but mostly did. Bob Stoops, after bringing in his original staff, he promoted Mark Mangino. He promoted Chuck Long. He promoted Kevin Wilson. He promoted Josh Heupel. He went 4 straight offensive coordinators through in-house promotion before going out and getting Lincoln Riley. And basically, all of those moves worked fine. They all produced great offenses. This is a new era in which we have the bloated coaching staffs. We got the analysts. We got the quality control coaches, whatever they want to call them these days. They got these guys on staff that are high-level coaches. Seth Latrell's been the head coach at North Texas 7 years. Yeah. So Nick Saban has modeled this, right? Mike Locksley, Steve Sarkisian, those are examples of guys who were just, subordinates, hanging around, helping out, and pretty soon they're the Alabama offensive coordinator. That's what we see with Seth Latrell. So I like it from that regard. I like it that he's also a Sooner himself. That never hurts, really. So lots to like about it. How's he going to differ from Jeff Lebby? Jeff Lebby came in with the OU air raid, but soon morphed, married into the Art Briles family, had the Baylor philosophy going. How will Seth Latrell take the Sooners back more to the Lincoln Riley type air raid days? I don't know. That's something we'll need to talk to Seth and watch with our eyeballs. Yep. But I like it on a lot of fronts. There's not anything to not like about it, other than you want you mentioned the minority angle of it. Also the fresh blood, new look. That's what Lincoln Riley did for Bob Stoops 8 years ago. Yeah. It sort of ended the stagnancy. But Seth Latrell's only been here a year. He's been down at North Texas the previous 7 seasons, so it's not like he's just been, inside the walls at the Switzer Center. So lots to like about it. He's going to be in the cauldron. First year is going to be with an SEC schedule. Won't be easy, but that's what you sign up for when you're calling the offense at Oklahoma.
Yeah, cauldron in the SEC, and also with a first-year starter at quarterback. So lots of drama that Seth Latrell is going to have to navigate through. The first, though, will be this Alamo Bowl, which I don't know what the plan was before Dillon Gabriel officially entered the portal, but now I have to assume that it is Seth Latrell calling things. It is Jackson Arnold. We're going to see it full force. Now Arizona's the opponent, but Oklahoma was pretty darn close to being in a New Year's Six Bowl, which Arizona's an improved program. Let's not undersell what the Wildcats have done this year under Jed Fish. A really nice turnaround. They get ready to head into the Big 12 next year. I don't know if that matchup does much for me. I mean, I think now the game's got all sorts of intrigue regardless of who they'd been playing. But, if this would have been a New Year's Six Bowl for Oklahoma, the opponent would have likely been much more difficult. And I don't know who it would have been, but it seems like they were pretty darn close to making it.
Yeah, when it came down to basically four teams for 3 spots: Ole Miss, Penn State, Missouri, Oklahoma, all at 10 and 2.
That sounds familiar, by the way. Top of the rankings, right?
Yeah. Somebody's got to be left out. The couple of things on that. The Sooners had what we, by acclamation, consider the weakest schedule in modern school history. It was actually probably a little better than we thought. SMU turned into a really good team, won the American Conference, almost got into the New Year's Six itself by 1 ranking spot. But would the Sooners have ended up in the Fiesta against Oregon, or would they have been shuffled someplace playing Liberty? I don't know if that's better than playing Arizona. I tend to think it's not.
I agree.
So there's pros and cons to it. Listen, but down the stretch of the season, those 4 schools, Ole Miss, Penn State, Missouri, Oklahoma, I was actually ranking teams every week, and I didn't see a dime's worth of difference in any of the 4's resume. Before the last week, I had OU in the top 10, I think, with Missouri. In my last one, I had Penn State and Ole Miss, and it went back and forth. You really have no gripes on this. So I think Arizona in San Antonio is a really good consolation prize. If anybody pays attention anymore to the bowls, I don't know if they do, but I mean, Arizona, I think, is 14th in the poll in the committee rankings. So you're not playing, a 7-5 team that finished 6th in the Pac-12. Arizona's really good. They lost twice down the stretch of the season, double overtime to USC and a close game to Washington. And they beat a lot of good teams. So it's a good test. I think you always want to be in the New Year's Six, what I like to still call the BCS Bowls. That's right, BCS. But it's a good test, and I think Sooner fans ought to embrace it. As you said, this is the launch of a new era. This is the Jackson Arnold era has begun, and it begins in San Antonio, Texas. So I would focus all on that game and see how it goes.
Being left out of the New Year's Six this year, while it would have been nice to be in one of those bowls, I agree with you. It's not a huge deal. Now, next year, if Oklahoma's in the same position, they're the team that gets left out of the 12-team playoff. So listen, I understand. We talked about this on our reaction after the playoff was announced, but there's always going to be somebody that gets left out, because if this was the scenario next year, Sooner fans would have said, well, why were we that first one out? But there's always going to be somebody that gets left out. And frankly, one of OU's biggest arguments probably would have been, we beat Texas. We beat a team in the playoff. Obviously Texas beating OSU, routing them in the Big 12 championship game. I don't know how that sat with Sooner fans. It was interesting to sort of see on social media and other places, to hear from OU fans. What were they pulling for? What did they want in the Big 12 title game? But, obviously they lose to OSU. They see OSU get routed. I just have to think, for Sooners everywhere, the thought is, we were so close. That has to be what Sooners are thinking. You don't lose at Kansas. You don't give up the late lead. You don't give up a late lead at OSU. I don't know if that's what sticks out to them, but if it was me, I think that's what I'd be thinking about as I was watching that Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, this was a really good Oklahoma team. I mean, they did beat Texas. One of the best wins in college football this year. Nobody beat the unbeatens. That's why they're unbeaten. So you go to the one-loss teams. Alabama has one loss. Texas beat them at Tuscaloosa. That's probably the best win in college football. Alabama beat Georgia in Atlanta. That's probably second best. But you might, on number 3, you might get down to either Washington beating Oregon, not once but twice, or the Sooners beating Texas on a neutral field. So Sooners had one of the best wins in college football, and their 2 losses were at the buzzer, late drives, one by Kansas to win it, one by OU against OSU that failed. So these games could have gone either way. They were very close to an 11-1 season, or even a 12-0 season, playing Texas in Arlington. Now, I tend to think Florida State would have got in over a 12-1 Oklahoma, even if the Sooners had swept Texas, just because they don't have that Alabama bonanza on their resume. But the Sooners were not that far apart from being right in the middle of all this hoopla, all this hype, all this controversy. So things are going good, but the way things change, it changes so much, you can't ever be sure. So, Brent Venables has to make sure everything else is battened down, not just this quarterback deal where he's lost a great quarterback and they don't seem to be all that upset about it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if the Sooners can get that 11th win at the Alamo Bowl. But it'll be like you said before, Barry, these bowls have become really the first of the next season. So obviously that game will count towards the 2023 record, but you got to start to think in terms of, what does it show us about the 2024 team? What are the opt-outs? Dillon Gabriel going, but who else could be gone? What other players might be not in Sooner Crimson and Cream? Those are questions we'll learn and we'll have answers in the coming days. Brent Venables had some of those opt-outs last year. He doesn't like them, but players have some power there and they can use it to play or not play. So what kind of team do they have? What does it say about what they've got returning? I think they got to feel pretty good about the momentum of this season. But yeah, even if you are sort of without some players you would have rather had, the chance to really build off of the momentum of this year through the bowl into the offseason, I think it's a positive for OU. One, if they can do that, I think it could be really, really good for them moving into 2024. Hey, that's all the time we've got this week. Remember, the Sooners play Arizona at 8 p.m. December 28th in San Antonio at the Alamo Bowl. Between now and then, we'll obviously have lots more on the Sooners. The recruiting hall, early signing day is coming up, obviously the transfer portal, and how Seth Latrell will fit in as OU's new offensive coordinator. Check us out at selloutcrowd.com, and we're also at barrytrammell.com and jenny-carlson.com. If this happens to be your first time hearing or watching us, be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. And if you like what you hear, please leave a review. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.